There's a moment quiet, unannounced, when someone stops being just a friend. You don't feel it when it happens. There's no alarm,
No warning.
no dramatic shift in a single conversation. It arrives slowly, the way fog moves into a city at night. By the time you notice it, it's already everywhere. And the dangerous part? Most people never see it coming. Not because they weren't paying attention, but because they were telling themselves a story. A very specific, very comfortable story. We're just friends. 3 words. Completely believable. Completely safe. And sometimes completely false. This is the psychological truth behind one of the most misunderstood emotional patterns in modern relationships. The slow, invisible transformation from friendship into emotional attachment. And why by the time most people realize it's happened, it's already too late to go back. Let's be honest about something first. Most emotional attachments don't start with romance. They don't begin with candlelit dinners or dramatic confessions. They begin in the most ordinary places. A late-night conversation that goes longer than expected. A small act of kindness that felt unusually meaningful. A joke that only the two of you understood. These moments seem harmless, and in isolation they are. But here's what psychology tells us: human beings are not wired to keep emotional experiences neatly compartmentalized. The brain doesn't draw clean lines between "this person is my friend" and "this person matters to me deeply." Over time, those lines blur, quietly, naturally, and often without either person's conscious permission. The word friend becomes a container, a label we use to manage emotions we don't fully understand yet. It gives us permission to stay close without the vulnerability of admitting what's actually building inside. And the emotional setup for this kind of attachment is almost always the same. 2 people, consistent contact, genuine care, and a mutual unspoken agreement not to examine what's really happening between them too closely. That's where it begins. Think about how it unfolds in real life. In the beginning, the friendship feels clean, normal. You talk, you laugh. You share things, nothing feels complicated. There's a lightness to it, the ease of connection without the weight of expectation. But then something shifts. It's small, almost invisible. You start noticing when they haven't texted you back, not in an obsessive way, just a quiet awareness,
A background monitoring.
They usually respond faster than this. And then a slight relief when the message finally arrives. You start saving things to tell them. A funny moment in your day. A frustrating experience at work. A thought you had at 2 a.m. that you knew somehow they would understand. You're not cataloging these moments for anyone else. Just them. You begin to notice their moods. You can read the subtle shift in their tone over text. You know when something is bothering them before they say it. And you feel a quiet pull to fix it, to make things better for them. Not because you feel obligated, but because their emotional comfort has somehow become personally important to you. Here's what's happening at this stage psychologically. Proximity is creating emotional investment. We tend to underestimate how powerful consistent access to someone can be. Every interaction deposits something small into an emotional account. Every shared laugh, every moment of vulnerability, every instance of being truly understood, these are not neutral events. They are building blocks, and they accumulate. The behavioral signs are subtle but consistent. You begin prioritizing their messages over others. You make small adjustments to your schedule so you can be available when they reach out. You find yourself mentally noting things they've mentioned, their preferences, their fears, their small habits, and filing them away without meaning to. This isn't infatuation. Not yet. It's something quieter, but no less powerful. It's a slow rewiring of emotional priority. Now here is the moment most people miss entirely. There comes a point in this process where the dynamic changes. Not because something dramatic happens, but because emotional need enters the picture. You notice you feel better after talking to them. Not just happy better, more grounded, more like yourself. Their presence, even through a screen, has become a form of emotional regulation, a way of managing your internal state without consciously realizing it. And then the absence becomes louder than the presence. When they're distant, you feel it. Not as sadness exactly, more like a low-grade unease. Something that's slightly off, a background discomfort that you can't quite name. You tell yourself you're just tired, or stressed, or overthinking. But the discomfort eases the moment you hear from them again. This is the shift. This is where friendship ends and emotional dependency begins. Because at this point, you're no longer just enjoying their company. You are relying on it. The emotional rhythm of your day has quietly organized itself around them. Their approval makes you feel validated. Their attention makes you feel seen. Their absence creates a gap that other people, strangely, cannot fill. And the most dangerous part of this stage is what people tell themselves. Because at this point, the internal narrative usually sounds something like this. I just care about them. That's what good friends do. I'm just a naturally loyal person. We just have a really deep connection. All of these statements may be true. None of them are the full truth. Because what's also true, and what most people are not ready to admit, is that the emotional architecture of a romantic attachment has been quietly constructed, brick by brick, conversation by conversation, without a single conscious decision to build it. So why does this happen? What's actually going on beneath the surface? The psychology here is rooted in something called attachment theory, the framework, developed by psychologist John Bowlby, that explains how human beings form emotional bonds. According to this framework, we are biologically wired to attach to people who make us feel safe, seen, and consistently present. The key word is consistent. Research in social psychology consistently shows that familiarity breeds attraction. Not always romantic attraction, but emotional attraction. The more time we spend with someone, the more we begin to associate their presence with comfort, safety, and positive emotional experience. This is sometimes called the mere exposure effect. Simply being around someone repeatedly increases how much we like them and how much we miss them when they're gone. But there's a second layer to this. Human beings have a deep psychological need for what researchers call felt security, the experience of being emotionally understood by another person. When a friendship provides this, when someone genuinely gets you, remembers what you've shared, responds with care and attention, the brain begins to register that person as a source of emotional supply. And once that happens, the line between friendship and attachment doesn't just blur, it dissolves. There's also a neurological dimension that most people don't consider. When we have positive social interactions with someone we trust, the brain releases oxytocin, commonly known as the bonding hormone. This isn't reserved for romantic relationships. It happens in deep friendships too. Over time, consistent positive interaction with someone creates a biochemical association between that person and feelings of well-being. Which means, and this is the part that surprises people most, the emotional experience of deep friendship and early romantic attachment can be neurologically almost identical. The difference is not in the brain chemistry. The difference is in the story we choose to tell ourselves about what we're feeling. This is not a rare experience. This is one of the most common emotional patterns in modern human relationships. And it's becoming more common, not less, in the context of how we connect today. Digital communication has fundamentally changed the landscape of emotional intimacy. We now have access to people in ways that previous generations simply didn't. Text messages that arrive at 11 p.m., voice notes that feel deeply personal. Hours of conversation across days and weeks that build a level of emotional familiarity that once required years of physical proximity. This constant digital access accelerates the attachment process. What might have taken months to develop in an earlier era can now form in weeks. The emotional investment builds faster. The dependency deepens more quickly. And the just a friend label becomes thinner and more fragile under the weight of what's actually being shared. There's also a cultural dimension here that deserves attention. We live in a time when romantic relationships are increasingly complex and emotionally risky. The vulnerability required to pursue something romantic, the possibility of rejection, the fear of losing the friendship, the uncertainty of mutual feeling creates a powerful psychological incentive to stay inside the comfortable fiction of HOD. Just friends because the friendship feels safe. The attachment feels manageable. As long as neither person names what's happening, both can continue benefiting from the emotional intimacy without accepting the risk of what naming it might bring. This is called emotional ambiguity, and it is one of the most psychologically exhausting places a person can inhabit. You feel deeply connected to someone, but the nature of that connection remains deliberately undefined. And both people, often simultaneously, are waiting for the other to make it real, while pretending the waiting isn't happening at all. This pattern plays out across ages, cultures, and relationship histories. It is not a reflection of weakness or confusion. It is a reflection of how profoundly human beings crave connection, and how far we will go to protect what we already have, even if what we have is quietly tearing us apart. Here's why this matters beyond the emotional experience itself. Unacknowledged emotional attachment doesn't stay contained, it spreads. It influences how you interact with other potential partners. It shapes how you respond to people who are interested in you. It quietly filters your emotional availability, making you present in body but partially absent emotionally, because part of you is already allocated elsewhere. And the person you're attached to, they sense it, not always consciously. But on some level, people always know when they hold more emotional weight in someone's life than they're supposed to. And the ways they respond to that knowledge, whether they lean into it, pull back from it, or ignore it entirely, will shape the entire trajectory of the connection. The friendships most commonly destroyed in adult life are not destroyed by conflict or betrayal. They are destroyed by unspoken emotional truth, by the slow accumulation of feelings that were never named, by two people who cared about each other deeply but were never honest with themselves or with each other about what they actually felt. And the painful irony is this: the fear of ruining the friendship by admitting the attachment is often the very thing that ruins it. Because emotional ambiguity is not a sustainable state. People eventually reach their limit. They grow resentful of proximity without definition. They make quiet decisions to pull away, to protect themselves. And by the time the other person notices the distance growing, the leaving has already been happening for a long time. This is what unaddressed emotional attachment costs. Not a dramatic ending, not a clear moment of loss, just a slow, quiet disappearance of something that once felt like it could have been everything. Before this video ends, consider something. Think about the people in your life right now that you describe simply as just a friend. Ask yourself honestly, is there any relationship in that category where the label feels slightly too small for what's actually there? Where the word friend is doing more work than it should be? And if the answer is yes, ask yourself this.
How long have you known?
Because here's the deeper psychological question this topic raises, one worth carrying with you. At what point does emotional distance actually begin? At the moment someone decides to leave, or at the moment they stop being honest about what they felt? And perhaps even more importantly, are we more afraid of losing the relationship or of finally admitting what it already is? These are not easy questions. They are not meant to be. But they are the questions that matter most when we're honest about how emotional attachment actually works in real human lives. Here's the quiet truth at the center of all of this. There is no clean line between friendship and love. There never has been. The two have always existed on the same emotional spectrum, separated not by kind but by degree. What we call friendship, at its deepest level, already contains the essential ingredients of love, care, loyalty, genuine interest in another person's well-being, the ache of their absence. The just a friend lie is rarely a lie told to another person. It is almost always a lie we tell ourselves, a form of emotional self-protection. A way of keeping something precious and fragile just a little bit safer, or so we believe by refusing to look at it directly. But emotions do not become less real because we refuse to name them. They become more powerful. They work beneath the surface, shaping behavior, directing attention, creating need long before we ever allow ourselves to admit what's happening. The most honest thing you can do for yourself and for the people you care about is to stop using language as a cage for feelings that have already grown beyond it. Because what you call something will never change what it is. And sometimes the most courageous act in a relationship is simply this: the willingness to tell the truth about what you feel before silence quietly makes the decision for you.